think we can all say that the transfer portal has been pretty quiet for Boston College up to this point. Well, things just picked up big time.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I am your host, AJ Black, and today's episode is brought to you by the College Football Playoffs. The College Football Playoffs is here, and you don't want to miss a moment of the action. The College Football Playoff presented by Allstate begins with 4 first-round games December 20th and 21st on ABC, ESPN, TNT, and Max. Well, you folks have asked for it in a special episode today. When something big happens, we got to go live. And Boston College lands a commitment from and signs, it's past commitment, he's in, from transfer quarterback Dylan Lonergan of Alabama. And I'm not doing this alone today. You guys wanted him, I'm sure. And to talk about it, we brought on Mitch Wolf of Eagle Insider. Mitch, how we doing?
Doing well. I'm doubly welcome back because I have my Yeti back and not a glass with ice in it. So some people will be happy to not have that in their earphones this time.
So BC, it's been quiet. We'll start with that. You know, there's been a couple. You know, we have the kid Rocket from Campbell. They just had a running back from Ball State. Like a lot of names, no one really has not familiar with. And then Tuesday afternoon, it was like a bomb dropped when On3, credit to Peter Nankos, who dropped it, announced that
Hayes Fawcett too, I believe. Although I'm not sure if he's just the graphics guy or actually has the info.
I don't know. One of the two has it.
Yeah.
They announced that BC landed Dylan Lonergan. Now, I have warned you guys all. I've said this all along that BC is keeping everything super secret this year. They're not telling me anything unless they want me to know it. I can ask questions. I usually get ghosted. They're trying to keep everything below the social media sphere, so they're not negotiating against themselves. So I said, if you go back to last week, I had already talked about Dylan Lonergan last Wednesday before he even became a feature here, but I was surprised because the last I had heard about this was that it sounded like it was a long shot. I talked to someone in the program, and they said, he's looking around, he's checking things out. And that lined up with what I heard today, which was that he had visited UNC and Bill Belichick and the University of Georgia this week. Well, he also visited Boston College and signed with Boston College. This is huge for BC. To me, this reminds me of Phil Dracovic with Jeff Hafley a little bit. And I know people don't want to hear that, but like in terms of excitement level, let's go with excitement. Because I don't even want to open the chat and hear what you guys have to say about that.
Yeah, everybody just slam their laptop shut, rip their earphones out. Yeah. Now everybody's checking out.
Okay, so let me try Kyle McCord with Syracuse. Is that a better one?
Okay, that's better.
Like just a big, momentum. It's momentum because going into this, as I said, it was all FCS schools. It was smaller pro. It didn't seem like Bill was all that interested in doing much in the portal, and now things have changed. Mitch, what is your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, there's not many times where BC gets a transfer from a big program like Alabama. And again, this is where the Dracovic and McCord transfers line up, is that they're transferring from a big, high-level power program to BC. BC is not in the same tier as schools like Alabama, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. I think that's fair to say. And Lonergan hasn't played much. He, I think, has 33 career snaps in 2 years at Alabama. Freshman year, he redshirted. He was behind Jalen Milroe, Ty Simpson, and then competing with Eli Holstein for the third job. And then Eli Holstein transferred out this past spring to go to Pittsburgh. So then he was competing with Jalen Milroe. Well, Jalen Milroe was the starter. Austin Mack comes in from Washington following Kalen DeBoer. And Ty Simpson is still there. This year he looks at that, figures Milroe could be coming back. If he doesn't, Ty Simpson is probably the assumed starter. And if he isn't, maybe Austin Mack, who has a longer relationship with the coaching staff, is the next guy up. So, sees a pretty big roadblock there, especially if Jalen Milroe comes back, hits the portal. And, again, this is where things for BC are impressive is if you look at this guy's offer sheet coming out of high school, in addition to Alabama, you have Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Ole Miss,
Florida,
UNC,
Georgia,
LSU,
LSU.
Florida, Georgia,
Yep.
Stanford, South Carolina, Arizona State, Arkansas, Auburn, 30 or 20 some schools, and a lot of them high power programs. And then there's also some of the regulars in the ACC, Virginia, Wake Forest. So, you kind of see how that lines up with where he could get into BC. And also he's a baseball recruit, has a background, I believe, as a pitcher.
Yep.
I'm not sure if he's going to do both at BC. I would assume not. But this was a guy who, reading up about his background at his school, they basically, as he played more and developed more, he got his team further and further into the Georgia State playoffs, which is obviously extremely competitive. He was playing at I think a 7A school, which I imagine is just a massive one, and getting further every year. So that's good to see that development. Again, it's hard to see what he's done on the field. I've been watching his games, 3 of them he's played in or whatever in his career. It's backups against FCS teams in Western Kentucky, so there's not much to go on. Looking at his spring games, and you do see definitely an uptick in his play in the spring games, at least from his freshman year to his redshirt freshman year. So, yeah, again, BC doesn't usually get guys like this, so getting a name like this with this kind of pedigree is huge for this program, huge for the momentum of Bill O'Brien.
And I don't know, I don't think you just mentioned it, but it goes back to Bill O'Brien's connection with Dylan Lonergan. He was the offensive coordinator. I know some folks know this, but let's repeat it just in case you didn't. He was the offensive coordinator for Alabama and his lead recruiter when he was with the Crimson Tide. So there's a connection there. A lot of times with transfer portal guys, it goes back to connections. Hafley did it a lot, right? Like, guys like Ryan Turner, he knew Jeff Hafley through recruiting.
Cam Martinez as well.
Cam Martinez, yeah. And then the positional coaches too. Like a lot of times positional coaches will know from recruiting or just through their circles, these guys. This is why Dylan Lonergan was such a good fit. I go back to some of the schools that were looking at him. Teams like Georgia, it seemed like to me when I heard that, I heard, I think it was on 3 again that said it earlier this week that he was going to end up in Athens to visit. I was like, I get it that you're going to be in an SEC school, but it seemed to me like if you're looking for a situation where you have a better chance to play, Boston College seemed like a better spot than the Bulldogs because, you look at BC's, their room, they have, it's Grayson James and then Jacoby Robinson, who's a big, and then Shaker Rising, who I think you saw and says, I think your thoughts is he's going to take a little while too. So you needed somebody. You need somebody to nip it at Grayson James's heels. Why is BC why do you think BC's like a good fit for him? And just from an outsider's perspective,
I think that he does. Again, not like he's being brought in here specifically to compete with Grayson James, but this is a guy that's going to come in and he's not necessarily like a long-term developmental project that I think definitely Shaker Rising is, and I think Robinson is still. So you got a guy who at least has, again, it's very limited snaps, but has played a little bit, has worked with a lot of different coaching staffs, honestly. He was recruited by Bill O'Brien, but then O'Brien leaves to go to the Patriots. Tommy Reese is the offensive coordinator under Nick Saban. The next year, Kalen Moore comes in with his offensive system. So he's gone through a lot of change over the last few years. Obviously, O'Brien recruited him because he thought he could run his system. And, looking at their passing games, I don't think there's a huge difference between Reese and what Kalen DeBoer wants to do and what Bill O'Brien does. There's a lot of similar, pro style concepts there. So it's not like this wild radical change of what he wants to do. And also, like you said, like this sets out, even if Lonergan doesn't win the job, it does still set out a very good timeline for BC's quarterback progression, which is something that we've talked about as a cycle that BC's trying to get out of, where they have these transfers and then they work out for a bit of a time and then they quickly fall off and then they go to the next guy and then they go next guy and so on and so forth. So basically, if James wins the job this year, which I think we both lean that way, but again, it's been a decently small sample size with him. Again, and he's performed well in the last few games. He's gotten better in every game. But if he keeps the job, he's that's that rumor. Sorry, let me finish this point, then I'll get back to that. If he wins the job this year, which is most likely, he starts out this year. If Lonergan backs him up, if James gets hurt, you have a guy that at least has some familiarity with Bill O'Brien, can run the offense more efficiently than a guy like maybe Jacoby Robinson or Shaker Rice could do. Next year, you assume Lonergan's going to be the starter, but he could also theoretically battle it out with Shaker Reisig. Now, granted, I still think Shaker Reisig is a year away from being a year away, but that way you can at least have Shaker Reisig on a better developmental timeline, and you could have Lonergan ready to start in 2 years, which is very good. The other point that I wanted to bring up there's some rumors about Ryan Williams, who is the star freshman from Alabama. His transfer rumors are very fake. There's an account masquerading as him on Twitter that's putting stuff out. So, make sure you check the @ and compare that with what the person's actual Twitter is, even if they have Twitter, because some of these guys don't even actually have or use Twitter. So,
Twitter also old people use now.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to go to Instagram for everything now.
That's true.
And TikTok. But all right, in a moment, I want to talk more about what the quarterback room is going to look like and get more thoughts on James and Lonergan and maybe some similarities and differences in how their styles will fit into Bill O'Brien's offense. We'll get into all of that in just a moment. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Now, my thing here, what I've been talking about here, I'm going on my Patriots because they have just been putrid the last couple of weeks. That last week was awful. And I'm not into the live mid-game wagers because just get it early before they completely start falling apart. They're going to play the Bills this week. I don't know what the spread's going to be, but whatever it is. For entertainment purposes.
I believe it was 14.5 last I saw.
Go with it because it's on the road too, I believe, too, right?
Yeah, Bills are debuting a new uniform combination as well.
Cool. So if you want to get in, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, next, let's talk about Prize Picks. Make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the place to get real money action. Just join over 10 million users and sign up today. It is the easiest place to use. You pick your players. You get your over, more, and less on at least 2 players with a shot to win up to $1,000 on your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks, America's #1 daily sportsbook. Now, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. This is Locked On Boston College, AJ Black, and this is a special live episode because you folks asked for it. Now, since you folks asked for it, I also want to ask you something. We also do Eagle Insider. Mitch is on there. I've got stuff up there. I've been doing a whole bunch of stuff. Mitch has got stuff going up for the Pinstripe Bowl. Right now, it's 50% off. I would love to have you guys join us. We're 10 away from a huge marker for our site in terms of VIPs. Help us get there. Get in for the price of a cup of coffee a month. It's 50% off until the end of December. Sign up today. Just go over to Eagle Insider. The details are super easy to use. All right. So now it seems like it's a 2-horse race with BC in their quarterback room. Are you worried at all? I saw someone, and I don't want to use names, saying that Grayson James is going to transfer. What are your thoughts on that, Mitch?
I think that's pretty unlikely because I think that they probably told Grayson James that they were going to be pursuing quarterbacks. And from what we've heard, it seems like they have been kicking the tires on a number of guys, obviously all of whom, except for Lonergan, have decided to go elsewhere. And I think that Grayson James probably understands that. He realizes that behind him is Jacoby Robinson, who's going to be a redshirt sophomore, who hasn't really played outside of the Duquesne game. I think he took the one snap where Grayson James lost his helmet against UNC, I think, and that's been it. Recognizes that they want to have some insurance in case Grayson James goes down, which is just for an injury, not necessarily his level of play. And they, want to secure their developmental timeline for the future because, again, Grayson James is done after this year. His eligibility runs out. And they probably don't want to go into the next year with just having Jacoby Robinson and Shaker Rice and then I guess Corbin Berry, who'll be the true freshman next year, as the only guys who are competing for the job, because none of those guys have really played meaningful snaps. And again, not that Lonergan has really played them either, but he's played more at a high level SEC school. So I think that's a little excessive. And again, I think they do think, hey, Grayson, we expect you to be the starter. You're the incumbent, but we are going to be looking at a guy for the future of the program. And I'm not sure how exactly you say this, but it's like we want to make sure that we are doing what's best for the program, for the team, and that means bringing in a guy that can push you a little bit, and also like is more so important for the future than the now.
Yeah, and Grayson seems to me, unlike some others, like a guy that can handle this. He seems like a competitor, and someone who I feel will take this news well. I do. I think he's not going to be a guy that is going to get really upset by this news and then storm off to the portal. Just doesn't seem like his style. But we've only known him for 5 months, and maybe I don't know. But I just don't think that's going to happen. And I think also James knows that he's probably got his best deal here. Like he's not going to like. There's no other Power 4 program right now. Well, I mean, maybe there are, but like where are you going to go? Like Wake Forest, who doesn't have a coach, or some of these other schools. Like the big ones have already taken their guys. It's kind of hard now. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that there's not, obviously there's a huge quarterbacks arms race going on right now where guys are hitting the portal and they're getting paid a bunch to go elsewhere. But again, like, I think there's, as we talked about, like there's a lot of teams that could kind of go and, kind of poke holes in what James did towards the end of the year, where you have this exceptionally strong rushing attack that the offense is really leaning on. Again, he played better in every game for the most part. But I still don't think he's necessarily shown enough to be where a program that's better than BC, or even one that's about the same level, is like, we are ready to go all in on 1 year of Grayson James. So I think he knows that this is probably his best opportunity. And, given the story that's going to come out about him, about where he was leaving FIU, this was really the only school that gave him a shot. And maybe he'll be a little more grateful for receiving that opportunity than other people.
Yeah, and I think the quarterback room itself, I think some folks have been asking about that. It's small. You need at least 4 guys. And I know folks, some people have been asking about like Jonathan Montague. He's a wide receiver. He's not. And he's
and I think, I'm not sure we talked about it on the podcast, but like when we were talking about like him committing, he was a guy that I looked at and I said, I'm not really sure this guy is a long-term quarterback, because he was a very good runner, like, and a very good like scrambling runner, like not really one where even like Castellanos in 23, where you could kind of build an offense around it. It was a lot of like pocket breaks down, he just goes. So I think that route makes more sense for him given his skill set. Again, we saw some struggles early in the year where I thought the coaching staff was using him improperly and giving him very difficult assignments to execute, and putting him in bad positions. But then towards the end of the year, we saw some better things that they were doing with him. So ideally they can use the offseason to hone that idea and say, okay, how can we use this guy the best? Again, I think next year, assuming no more transfers, you've got Lewis Bond, Reed Harris, and Jaden Ski coming back. Those guys are your 3, and that's a pretty solid trio, I would say. Mm-hmm. So if Montague's your 4, maybe your 5 now with is it VJ Wilkins?
VJ Wilkins. We're going to call him Rocket.
Rocket Wilkins.
Yep.
So he's competing for that wide receiver 4 spot, and I think that's perfect for him. I would have loved if they could have redshirted him this year. Maybe you redshirt him next year. I'm not exactly sure what they can do with that, but that's a better position for him than and part of that was Jaden Skeet's injury down the stretch. So I think that you can find a way to use him as a wide receiver, and he can be a pretty effective player in that role.
And I think as well, we're talking about like this room. You saw a little bit of Shaker Rising. This is a kid. Most blue chips are the guys that are going to jump in and play immediately. These are guys that are like immediate studs right out of high school. I don't think of Rising as that. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to take some time. Like he's coming in as a gray shirt. So he's coming in early. That's great. But it's, he's going to catch up to the college speed, get his body into college shape, all that stuff, learn the college, playbooks, all that. The coaching staff always talks about how that's a huge development curve. I don't feel like he's a guy that you can depend on to do much next year.
Absolutely. I've been saying that he needs to redshirt pretty much since that game where I saw him. And weirdly enough, like I went to see him that one game and I was very skeptical of him overall. And then in every other game in the season, he was just lights out, apparently, just throwing video game numbers up, which is crazy. And then in this playoff game against the same team, apparently he wasn't as good. But for that reason, it's like, okay, there's clearly something there that I didn't get to see. But I'll also say, like, he's a smaller quarterback. When I stood next to him, he's got some big poofy hair, so maybe that gets up to my height, but we're about the same height. I'm about 6 feet tall. So I was like, okay, maybe he needs to fill out a little bit, do some physical development. If he can grow an inch or two, that'd be fantastic. Unlikely, but still. And again, you want to have him have that year to adjust to the college life. You don't want to have him be thrust into action before he's ready, because that can sometimes really hurt the developmental curve of quarterbacks or players in general, but especially quarterbacks. So yeah, I think that this could really help reset the timeline of the BC quarterback cycle to a point where it's like, okay, we're actually having a healthy development curve here where everybody has a year, then they, play as a backup, then become the starter. And obviously the portal could throw all that into a wrench in the years to come, but it's overall, I think, a pretty good thing.
Right. And we mentioned Curran Berry. I believe Boston College is going to go for 2 quarterbacks in the class of 26 as well. I've talked to some people on the staff, and it looked, if you just follow the recruiting nuggets, they're still going after some other guys. So there's probably going to be 2 coming in then, which goes into what Bill O'Brien's philosophy is, which is he wants to treat recruiting like a farm system and the transfer portal as free agency. So he wants to do the majority of stuff through his recruiting and then add guys in. And that kind of leads into what our last conversation is going to be with. I don't think I've talked to Mitch yet about some of these other guys. We're going to get into just some of the other names that have popped up, maybe some of Mitch's thoughts on who they're getting.
Answer some questions from the chat, because there's a few that I think we can address.
Yep, we can answer some questions and go from there. We'll be back. We'll continue this in just a moment. It's that time of the year. The college football playoff is back, and with the new expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate, live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Again, this is Locked On Boston College, AJ Black here. And if you're done with this episode, go check out Locked On ACC and hate listen to Kenton Gibbs and Alex Don. I'm just kidding. Every BC fan has, when I do these reads, they're like, why are you continue to talk about them when they don't talk about BC? Well, I'm telling you about them. You can go listen to them, give them your thoughts, put it in the comment sections. They read it. So check them out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right. Now, BC has 4 commitments in the transfer portal. They've lost 11 guys total, including like Elijah Krajnovic. But you also can include like Nigel Tate, who's gone, Holden Simmons, who medically retired. They have some spots that have opened up. I think that's up to like 14. Caleb Jones is retired. There's going to be some other spots that open. So far, as I started this episode off with, it's been quiet. Like the guys like VJ Rocket Wilkins and Zeek Moore, and then the I'm totally blanking on his name. The Ball State
Vaughn Pemberton.
Vaughn Pemberton sounds like an English royalty. These are the 3 guys that have committed already, and folks keep asking, so I'm going to say it right now. I can't give you. I teased it online, and that's kind of my job. I can't give you all the nuggets at once. I give you a little taste of it. I'll give you 1 nugget for you. All right. It's 3 guys. You're going to get news on 3 different guys in the next week. Starting with tomorrow, arguably, I think the biggest one. And I'll have an interview with him up as soon as he announces. But just as I've said before, I can't like ruin their moments. Like they've got to come out with it on their own. But you'll get that.
Additionally, and this is the whole reason why BC is doing this, they're avoiding a Bashal Tootin situation from last year.
Well, kind of. I don't know what changed, but all these guys are signed now, so it's different. They're like in. They're not. It's like I see people complaining about it being commitments. These aren't commitments. Like Dylan Lonergan is in. He's signed. He's in.
And that just might be a more professional way of doing it. It's like we're not gonna get all out of sorts when they're committed. We're gonna make them. We're going to have them sign, and then we will announce it.
I think it's a change in how they viewed it before, because I think before when it was Tootin, it was when you started classes is when you officially signed that paperwork, the first class you took. And now I think with NIL and all that stuff, I think it's when you sign your NIL paperwork, that's when you're officially locked in. You basically are signing a contract. It's the professionalism of amateur football. But let's talk about these guys. Let's get into Zeek Moore. What are your thoughts? Any thoughts on him?
I think that he is going to fill a role similar to what Kamari Morales did this past year. Obviously, Kamari Morales was very successful in that role as the F tight end, the second tight end that moves around a little more. I'm not sure how. I don't know if he's going to be as good as Morales. Morales was a experienced ACC level player, was a high level recruit, and he took to the offense like a duck to water. Very easy transition. He was impactful pretty early on. Moore is coming from Florida Atlantic, so maybe there could be a bit of an adjustment period there, but BC does have a need at that position because you're going to be starting Jeremiah Franklin, who I would say finished the season well. And besides him, it's Matt Reagan, who basically didn't play this year outside of the Duquesne game, and then a bunch of walk-ons and true freshmen. So Zeek Moore has played a lot in the last 2 years of Florida Atlantic, so at least he has experience, even if it is at the Conference USA or American Conference level. Rocket Wilkins.
So can I just jump in on Zeke too? I got a chance to watch his film. I think I put it up on his post today, and kind of funny. He plays very violent. Like he's a good blocker. Like that's what you're into. It's against smaller teams.
But... Yeah, hey, that's useful.
Yep.
And then so Rocket Wilkins, haven't had a ton of time to find Campbell University tape, if you can believe it. But having a guy like Rocket is fantastic.
Rocket and Turbo.
Yep, Rocket and Turbo, which is great. I imagine he's going to be a speed threat out of the slot. Kind of what we envision Jaden McGowan being. But ostensibly, the staff thinks higher of him, so we'll see how that goes. Vaughn Pemberton from Ball State didn't play a ton at Ball State, but he's a big running back. I wonder if him and Moore, who are built somewhat similarly, could this signal the return of a H-back or fullback to this offense? Probably not, but maybe they're kind of envisioning a different role for guys like that, which is interesting.
And if folks don't know about, I haven't had a chance to really talk about Vaughn Pemberton on the site because he committed at like midnight last night. He is, if you guys remember, Quinn Pemberton walk on for BC basketball a couple years ago. That's his twin brother, much bigger, but that's his twin brother. And I believe his dad, Steve Pemberton, is on the board. He's either on the board of trustees. He's involved in something high up at BC. So there's a lot of BC connections there, and that's probably why how they figured out who this kid is, because BC does that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so that's pretty much all I have on those guys so far. Working on my thoughts on the names to come. But I want to there's some questions in the chat that I want to talk about. Can you put up that one from Andrew from 7:48 p.m. or 9:48 for you, I guess?
9:48 p.m.
Andrew, Andro. Yep. Okay. Do you think Bond is at any risk of leaving? I don't think so, because, and I don't really understand why there's a lot of talk about this, and I guess it's just because he was Thomas Castellanos' good friend, and people just kind of assumed he would follow him. But other than that, I don't think there's really been a lot of evidence to suggest he would be leaving. Apparently, he has been posting the stuff about BC's transfers committing to BC, so I have to imagine he's in. It's not like his usage fell off after James took over for Castellanos. In fact, he was, used more. The passing game was more efficient, so he was more productive. And I think you figure with the whole offseason of him working with Grayson James and Lewis Bond, again, the James Bond combination, which we need to use more, that could actually be even better, because that position in O'Brien's offense, that slot receiver, that's the wide receiver that gets a ton of targets. So that's going to be good for Bond. He's got a good position here. And, again, I think that while he was good this year, I think he his overall production and maybe like explosiveness wasn't as good as it was the year before. So maybe that's why, he's not getting aggressively courted by other teams. But again, I don't think that I've really seen an indication to think that he's leaving. And if it does, it would be still a surprise to me. I think people have just been kind of trying to pre-cope in the event that he did leave by assuming it's going to happen. But again, I don't really think I've seen any evidence to indicate that it would happen. Can you put up the one right below it? Perfect.
I can answer this one real quick. Yes. Did Jordan McDonald burn his red shirt?
Yeah, he's never actually redshirted.
So he played more than 4 games. So
yes, and he played in like almost every game when he was at UCF because he was on special teams a ton. So this will be his, unless he redshirts this year, which I guess would have to be an injury one. This is probably gonna be his final year of college football.
And then I'm gonna go to Insect. Skeet was hurt. First time I heard. Mitch, I think you saw it.
Yeah, I thought we talked about this on the show, and maybe this is every
Insect. Follow us on
every comment. Every episode is every comic book is somebody's first. Watching the tape in the Louisville game after one of the touchdowns, I saw him like walking with his hand grabbing his, like he was walking but like limping, and his hand was on the back of his thigh, like at his hamstring. Again, we haven't received official confirmation from that because again, information security with a Bill Belichick version or a Tree Bergejarian run operation, you're not going to get a lot of info out of people, but I'm imagining there was something to do with his hamstring, and those things are tricky. There's not a set timeline for any of those. Again, they can be very different. So I imagine that whatever that was knocked him out for the rest of the year, and that's why we didn't see him. And again, I have no confirmation on that. I'm just saying I saw that on film. He didn't play for the rest of the season. That's Occam's razor there.
All right, continuing down. Any hints? I already gave you hints on the portal news. Randy Vera asked, O-line, Josh Thompson, Northwestern still available in the portal? Yes, but I have not heard anything about BC being connected with him, so I wouldn't look into that. All right. Is there anything else here? Did I just mention Bashal Tootin? That brings back dark memories of a Thursday night in Blacksburg. Yes. And if you followed along with his recruitment, it was more of a horror show. He horrified BC fans on multiple occasions. I remember he committed. So if you don't know the story of Bashal Tootin, he committed to BC. Credit to, I think it was Savon Huggins back then. Because he's a New Jersey guy. He committed to BC out of North State, NC Central. Excuse me.
NCANT.
No, he was NC Central, I think. Wasn't he?
I'm pretty sure it's NCANT, but I'll check.
Okay. Whatever one. Smaller school.
NCANT, yep.
Mitch has got it.
It's from Paulsboro, New Jersey.
And so he committed and was, from what I've heard, he got to the point we were talking about how people are signed versus committed. He got on campus at BC and then got called by Virginia Tech and then ended up ditching BC to go to the Hokies. That if that isn't a horror show, then that I don't know what to tell you. That was,
and he torched BC pretty good too in their 2023 game.
Yep.
Even before the horror show that was the 2024 version.
Hey Mitch, question from the Rye Force. Are we back?
So I know who this is. I won't dox him, but we were in band together, so we're friends. It's hard to say we're not. Things are looking good. Again, with the names that are going to come out, I'm pretty pleased with how this is going so far. I think the portal strategy is a little different than what I expected, but I think that they see the roster in a similar way that I do, which again, I'm not tooting my own. I'm just saying, like, from what I think they would value, that seems to be the case. And I think they're doing a good job of filling out where they need to, but also they recognize that they have some guys that they want to get more playing time. And this is something that we discussed with the offensive line, I guess last year when we were talking about the portal with the offensive line. It's like at some point, the guys that are there, you want to see them play, and they are, you already have them in-house and you're paying them whatever you are. And that is usually better than going out and, trying a lower level transfer or an upper level transfer that just hasn't played. It's like, what you have in this guy, and that's better than kind of rolling the dice on somebody you don't know as well. So, I think I'm pretty satisfied with this. Will, we'll talk about this more as the portal goes on, but like, I don't see the offensive line as big of an issue as some people do. I think that there's still a lot of veterans that are coming back, and I think there are guys that are still there that, we kind of want to see play and see if they are going to be something that can be, if they can be meaningful contributors to this team in the near future.
And there's a bunch of fun questions. We're not going to get into it because we're running out of time. Off topic, do we know what Phil Dracovic is up to this day? Don't know, and I don't want to say it because if I say something, I'd probably offend someone. So not going to say that.
I believe his brother isn't his brother still on staff at BC?
Sure is.
Yeah.
So no jokes about that one. And I think that's it. I think that's all we got. We got Peter who wants to make sure we'll end it with this. To people watching this video, next time you get a new car, please make it either a Tesla or a Polestar.
Boy, how I've missed live comments.
We don't do live all that. I mean, I do live when I do live after the show, after the games, but we don't do live unless there's big stuff. And this commitment is a big one. So it's a signee. He's in. We'll get more info as this comes along. I think Bill had his Stockyard show today that he does with Meter, one of his 3 Meter shows every week. But maybe we'll hear more about that later. But as I said, news should be dropping on Eagle Insider tomorrow. Please come over and become a Eagle Insider VIP. Mitch has been doing game film. Mitch, tell everyone why, from your perspective, people should sign up.
So, first thing that we've had is so right now we're doing the previews of Nebraska for the bowl game, which I've kind of looked at both sides of the ball, looking at their tape, their statistics, just kind of a recap of both sides. Then I'll be going through the match report, which I already do, which I do for every opponent. So that'll be happening, and then bowl game will happen. And I think BC has a pretty good shot in this game. I think it'll be an interesting litmus test for what this team is going to be going forward. And then once we get in the offseason, we'll be reviewing a lot of the stuff from this past year. Obviously projecting what some of these transfers can do. Trying to get some of their tape if I can find it. Obviously, it's a little more difficult to find FCS tape for some of these lower level guys, but I'll see what I can do. And then, yeah, I mean, it's an exciting time, and by joining Eagle Insider, you can get a ton of information that you wouldn't be otherwise getting, and you can be the most well-informed BC fan that pretty much anybody in your circle will be, which is a good thing to be, in my opinion.
We got me. I got the insider stuff on any scoops and stuff going on with the team. You got Mitch with film analysis. We got BC Hockey Blogger who does everything with hockey. I mean, if you want BC hockey stuff, he's got it. We've got national people. I've got a whole article up right now that I didn't write, that our national basketball team wrote about recruiting in BC basketball. There's so much stuff going on. If you want to come over to Eagle Inside, I hope you do. And if you're listening to this episode too, hit the subscribe button. I am, last I checked, 40 subscribers on YouTube away from 2,000. Which is insane because I think the BC Eagles athletics page has like 4,500. And so I'm catching up to BC. We're 39 away. If you're there and you have not subscribed yet, it's totally free. You'll get all of our episodes. Hit that right now. Make sure you become part of our club here on YouTube. Thank you all for listening. And for Mitch, this is AJ. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. We'll see you again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College. Your team every day.